Today's episode of the WAC Podcast is presented by Hercules Tires. Now here's your host, Eric Danner.
Welcome to the WAC Podcast. My name is Eric Danner, joined as always in our first segment by Rachel Vigil, the WAC on-air talent and broadcasting coordinator. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Eric. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, Rachel. Obviously this weekend was a little sad around the country, but personally, were you able to do anything? Were you able to get outside, do anything like that this weekend?
Yeah, I got outside. I got a haircut. I chopped 7 inches
Nice.
off my hair, so nice little change for me. Besides that, though, just kind of hung out, still staying at home. I'm going to be going to a cabin with some family members later this month to kind of just escape a little thing. So I'm still trying to stay away from people just in case.
Yeah. It's a strange times. Obviously, we've been in lockdown for about 3 months. It's June now, so we've flipped the calendar. We talked a little bit in previous shows how fast all of a sudden things are going by, and that seems to be the case again. We're now in the stage where, in a normal year, we would be maybe summer vacations, those kind of things. But here it's kind of all seems like it's the same thing going on Groundhog Day every day.
I know. I was actually supposed to be heading to Florida on Friday of this week, and we had an extended family vacation, and then obviously that got canceled. So I'm bummed, but I also understand that it's better to be safe than sorry, of course. So, but yeah, I know it's so weird. I wish I was going to the beach. I love the beach area.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite places, but again, rather be safe than sorry. My grandma was going to go and everything like that. So you just never know.
Yeah, and actually this past week I would have been at the SVG convention in Atlanta, and if you watch the news coverage, obviously with the protesting and rioting and all those sorts of things going on this past week in Atlanta, the hotel where the SVG convention is every year, right next to the CNN Center, which I was watching the live coverage of, the windows being broken and protesting and fires being set right in front of the CNN Center, which is adjacent to that hotel. And right on the other side of it is the College Football Hall of Fame. I don't know if you saw that, Rachel, that was basically destroyed in the rioting in Atlanta. So tough times for our country. Obviously a lot of unrest. Saw on Monday morning, Lance Irvin, the Chicago State men's basketball coach, sent out a tweet. I understand the pain and frustration about what's happening in America. We must continue to organize peaceful protests and collaborate to find positive solutions. During this time of desperation, we cannot fall into our own trap, or into the trap of looting and ravaging our own communities. When we destroy Black businesses, we are destroying Black jobs, other economic benefits and opportunities. So Lance tweeting that, so I encourage everybody to check that out on his Twitter feed. And obviously we echo a lot of those same sentiments as Lance Irvin.
Yeah, I wanted to say something, but I don't think I quite understand. I've never been in that position where I hear everybody talking. Obviously, I hear what's going on. I hear all their frustrations, and I would never understand that personally. But I do stand by everybody. I've been in cars when unfortunately African Americans have been pulled over, and I was never scared, but I know they were scared. So I feel their frustrations, and it's just crazy how it's kind of all come full circle with Kaepernick and everything going on. And I just want our country to be good again, and hopefully it's hard to put into words everything going on right now and to try and wrap your head around it. You just want everybody to feel safe and be healthy again too. So definitely struggling times, but I know our country will hopefully get through it, and messages are being heard, I think, unlike any time before.
Very well said, Rachel. And this is the WAC podcast. So the purpose of this is to discuss things around the Western Athletic Conference, and trying to change or pivot here into maybe some more positive news. This past week, Nick Gonzales of New Mexico State named the National Player of the Year. So congratulations to Nick, and what a season he had.
I know. He was top 5 in 10 categories nationally, which is crazy. He's actually going to be our guest for WAC All Access this week, and I am so excited to sit down and talk to him. Obviously, like, huge career. It'll be really interesting to see his standpoint on, like, when everything got canceled and, you know, with the MLB draft coming up too. So I'm very excited to sit down and talk to Nick. He's super busy, so like getting him in was definitely a trying time. So we don't have a time narrowed down yet, but he is going to be on our guest this week.
Wow, that's a great get, Rachel. Nick, the collegiate baseball newspaper national player of the year, and as you mentioned, led the nation in 5 different categories, including home runs, runs batted in, runs scored, and total bases. And let's not forget, Rachel, last year when they played an entire season, he led the nation in batting average.
Yeah, dude's a stud. I mean, Nick Gonzales is a complete stud. I'm so excited to see where his career is going to go in these upcoming months and everything with the MLB draft happening. You know, maybe he's going to be our top pick here in the WAC, which will be very exciting.
Yeah, and the MLB draft will be coming up June 10th, and it's been announced that it'll be broadcast on both ESPN and the MLB network, and it'll be a nighttime draft. So it's a little different because in prior years, Rachel, when it's a 40-round draft, the MLB draft really doesn't have that same sizzle as maybe the NFL draft or the NBA draft. But this year, with not much going on, it's a 5-round draft, so maybe people are a little more familiar or getting more familiar with some of the folks who are going to be drafted here. And that'll be June 10th, so 7 o'clock Eastern time, so where we are, 5 o'clock Mountain time, to watch that. So the other thing there is another mock draft. MLB's mock draft actually came out and has Nick Gonzales going number 4 to the Kansas City Royals. Now I've seen, I did see one mock draft that had him dropping to number 9, but pretty much everything else has had him in the top 5, which obviously would be very good for Nick, and obviously a bigger contract the higher up that he goes.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I think we all love about sports is we never know what is actually going to happen. So we would obviously love for him to go in the top 5, but even if he drops down to 9, that's still like incredible. So, I mean, whatever happens to him, I'm sure it's going to be good.
And we've had players in the WAC, obviously, since 1962 that were taken in the top 5, and Arizona State used to be members of the WAC. And actually the first ever draft pick in the Major League Baseball draft, number 1 overall, was Rick Monday, who played for Arizona State and obviously played in the WAC then. And then the following year, Reggie Jackson, who was his teammate, was drafted number 2 overall. So that'll be some WAC in the Day trivia coming up here in the next few weeks. One of the things I'm working on for this week, Rachel, for WAC in the Day is the last time we had a first-round pick in the WAC, and it was back in 2010, and that was Colton Wong, who plays for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was the 22nd overall pick in the draft that year, and Colton Wong, now the starting second baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals. He went to the University of Hawaii when they were in the WAC, and in 2010 he was the MVP of the WAC tournament, was 3-time first-team All-WAC, and he's basically been the Cardinals starting second baseman since 2014. So it took him a couple of years, which is typical. You have to work your way through the minors before you get that shot in the majors, but not a power hitter like Nick Gonzales, but a middle infielder like Nick Gonzales. So maybe he can point to Colton Wong's success in the Major League Baseball ranks as to something that could happen for him.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to ask Nick, too, like, if he's talked to anybody that used to be in the WAC. Obviously, Joey Ortiz last year, if he's been able to get in touch with him and what he's been doing and just kind of the off-season workouts and see maybe if they might get together to try and do some things. But, yeah, I'm really excited to sit down and talk to Nick and just see who he's been able to get in contact with and to hopefully help him with this next journey.
Yeah, I saw Adam Young tweeted out, I think it's 5 or 6 years in a row, New Mexico State's had somebody drafted, I want to say in the top 10 rounds. And Jet Johnson, another guy who plays in the Orioles organization that's getting close to getting to that major league level. So I'm sure, as you mentioned, Joey Ortiz, I'm sure he and Nick have had conversations about the next step as well. So that'll be very exciting for us coming up June 10th, the Major League Baseball draft. More exciting news, Meghan Kalitta also picking up an award. The Chicago State great player that they had the past few years was our Defensive Player of the Year in the Western Athletic Conference, or Libero of the Year. 2020 AASP Career Development Award honoree by the NCAA. So congratulations to Meghan Kalitta on picking that up.
Yeah, Meghan is the biggest sweetheart. Since I met her in SAC, she's been nothing but kind. She's extremely forward with like everything, all of her passions too, and just helping other individuals. And kind of how this all came about was when the SID at Chicago State, Corey Miggins, had passed away. She kind of stepped into this role, and I think it's just benefited her in so many ways that she's been able to help other people too.
Yeah, we did the Learn, Compete, Inspire story with Meghan. Also interviewed Hope Schuler, as there was a whole host of people. Once Corey passed away, very tragic, early 40s, very unexpected. Chicago State didn't have an assistant SID or anyone else that could step into the role. Meghan was just supposed to be an intern that semester. And again, knowing Meghan a little bit, I mean, it's not surprising that she stepped into the role, learned as much as she could about it, kept Chicago State afloat, so to speak, in terms of their sports information responsibilities, and did a great job there. But Hope Schuler was also in that piece that we did, and she helped organize, because she had worked in Illinois, some SIDs in the Chicago area that also pitched in to help out Chicago State. So that's on our YouTube channel. I know the LCI about Corey Miggins. So if you want to check that out. So congratulations again to Meghan. I know she's on your radar for WAC All Access in the next few weeks, I think, right?
Yes, she will definitely be on here in the upcoming weeks. So definitely excited to talk to her, obviously see what her future plans hold as well.
And Chicago State also naming a new associate AD for communications. And Jim, he comes with an awful lot of experience, Rachel. He was with the Chicago Bears for 16 years as their media relations manager, and most recently comes from the Seattle Dragons of the XFL. Obviously, the XFL had just started up, and then when COVID happened, they had to cease operations. So Jim goes back to Chicago, and I looked at the press release they sent out, and all the quotes they put about what things people have to say. Brian Urlacher was one of the people quoted in that, and Brian Urlacher, tying in the WAC again here, former WAC, he played in New Mexico, and his final year, I believe, was in the Mountain West, but he played a couple years in the WAC, and he had some very nice things to say about Jim. So we're excited to have him in the league.
Yeah, I think super interesting. He's coming from the XFL. Obviously, we have no idea what that holds now with COVID, but I'm sure that's just like a whole new ball game for everything. XFL kind of was just a different animal, a different beast. So to see what he learned from just the short time there to what he'll bring to Chicago State is really interesting.
And Chicago State will be the subject of WAC Top Plays next week. We're doing something a little different as we're now in summertime, Rach, where we have the going through and picking out the top 4 plays of the year, and then having a competition, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. This week's competition is California Baptist, and we have 2 women's soccer plays, a men's soccer play, and 1 men's basketball play. So I'm kind of interested to see how the CBU fans or WAC fans in general are going to vote for those plays. The Milan Aqua step back against Seattle U towards the end of the season in overtime. That was one of the best plays I thought this year. Was comes in as our number 4 seed though. So the CBU soccer fans really came out in droves to vote for their favorite plays this past year.
I love this idea. I think I've mentioned it before, and I think it's so cool to kind of see, their own programs have to go head to head to see what happens. And for soccer to be above basketball, when you think of like the powerhouse sports, you think of basketball and football, but for soccer to step up, I'm like, yeah, that's freaking awesome. I love it.
And then Rick Croy was also in the news this past week, the men's basketball coach at California Baptist, and he was serving lunch to frontline workers in Riverside. So again, we kind of see, with all the bad that's happening in the world, and it's always kind of good to see these good stories and things like Coach Croy going out to help out those frontline workers.
Yeah, and no surprise that it was Chick-fil-A. I mean, we all love Chick-fil-A. But yeah, I mean, I think it was awesome to see Coach Croy go out and do that. They fed 300 workers out there, which is awesome. And we appreciate all those people that are still putting their lives on the line to help us out and to keep us safe and healthy as well. So big shout out to Coach Croy on doing that and, putting himself at risk to go and help all these people too.
Right. So that obviously was a great story there with Coach Croy and Rachel. Again, it's interesting times. So we always like to pass along those good stories. So if you have any for us, please by all means hit us up on Twitter or Instagram, wherever you might find those stories.
Yes, definitely. Send them our way. We love to hear them. We love to share them. Social media can be such a great platform, I think, to get different stories out. I was reading news articles from all the protests that were going on from different cities that I would probably never have seen before. And I think there are a lot of really great protests going on. I think it's great to get your voice heard, but they've also been very peaceful. So I think social media is awesome. So yeah, any great stories that you do have, please send them our way. We would love to share them.
All right, this was our first video version of the WAC podcast. We're going to try to do this each and every week, at least in our first segment with Rachel Vigil. So if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple or on SoundCloud, our next segment is going to be Violet Palmer, the WAC coordinator of women's basketball officials. And she has a great story, very interesting to talk to, and first female NBA referee. And is now our coordinator of women's basketball officials. So look forward to that conversation, Rachel. And thanks again for taking some time out, and we'll see you again next week.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that is Rachel Vigil. You're listening to the WAC Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the WAC Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And check out our website at wacsports.com.